My name is Michael Brad Bayless, and I am the founder of Bayless Healthcare. Today, this is a very exciting program, and we're very pleased to have Dr. Melton, as she will challenge you to open your mind to a different way of looking at music therapy. Thank you.
So good morning, everyone. I am excited to be here to talk about hip hop therapy this morning. And if you hadn't noticed, it is 8:30 in the morning. So I'm glad to see some of you have your coffee, some snacks, some water. That's wonderful. If you didn't bring any, if the coffee that you have had, good morning, hasn't taken effect, it is okay because we have hip hop. And what I mean by that is that today, I hope that this presentation will be engaging, and I hope that you'll really be able to interact and participate. So this is a warning for you, a pre-warning, that I'm going to call you up to, well, not up, but I'm going to call you to engage and interact with me in terms of hip hop. A couple of things before we get started. I may say some things, you may see some things or hear some things in the music and the images that I've brought that you may have a strong reaction to, and that's okay. I just want you to pay attention to what reaction that you're having, because that tells you a lot about using this form of therapy and self-awareness and developing that self-awareness and being able to use this modality. No, go ahead. I'll be standing up. Good, I'm glad more people are coming in. This is going to be great. Okay. When I first began reading about and studying hip-hop therapy, while there's a lot of books and information about hip-hop and hip-hop culture and the music, hip-hop therapy is relatively new in the scientific literature. And so when I began to read about it, it just clicked for me. And it was important for me to understand it in a specific way in terms of making mental health services and meeting mental health needs that are accessible. And when I think about that accessibility, I think about it in two ways. One, especially in communities, that the services are available, that the people are actually being able to go in, talk with somebody, be validated in their experiences, and hopefully change is facilitated. So just the availability of services in the community. I also thought about accessibility in terms of it being culturally relevant. Is the individual able to engage in the services, the interventions, the modalities that are provided? And when you're thinking about communities that have been historically disenfranchised, that have been disconnected from mainstream systems, that point of accessibility is very important in considering how are you going to work with them, how are you going to relate to folks in providing and addressing those mental health needs. So as we go through this presentation, while we're going to be talking about hip-hop, we really wanted to emphasize the therapeutic components of hip-hop, such that when you're interacting with folks in diverse communities, you're able to speak with them and validate experiences that, in a way that honors their culture, honors what they're bringing in, and helping them connect and engage. And that's what hip-hop therapy, I believe, does. So what we'll be doing today, we'll be going over a brief definition, well, not brief, but a broad overview of what hip-hop is. And again, as I said, there are many books about hip-hop, and there's lots of controversy around hip-hop. So let me tell you a couple of things that we won't be doing with only having 2 hours today. We won't be going into a lot of those controversial points of use of the N-word, the glorification of violence, of the misogyny and the objectification of women. We won't be going point for point, debating the sides or anything like that. We'll be touching on that. I will highlight them and talk about why it's important to acknowledge that in the culture for when you're wanting to use this and use this in your work. But again, we can spend courses and time on looking at that aspect of hip hop. But again, we're just going to do a broad overview of it. Then we're going to go into defining what hip-hop therapy is and its applications and things that you really want to consider in being sure that this will be the best modality to engage and facilitate change. And because we live in a world and operate in a profession that is all about evidence-based practices, about making sure that we have evidence of efficacy and effectiveness, and that's cost efficient, We want to review some of the scientific literature. Now, again, there's not a whole lot out there. And I'll talk about those limitations in the literature and also some limitations in using hip-hop therapy overall. So that's kind of what we'll do. And I'm going to call on you again to help me out with this. So, before we move on, I'm going to ask you to do something. Go ahead and close your eyes. Take a couple of deep breaths. Clear your mind of the traffic you had to fight getting here this morning. Hip hop. What comes to mind when you hear those words? Keep your eyes closed. What images? What sounds? Go ahead and open your eyes. Anybody think of an image like this? Any of this come to mind? Okay, so this is, you guys know who this is? Mm-hmm. Icon, right? Tupac. This is Tupac. Forget that we have, knowing some of my students that are not from America, yes, this is icon in hip hop, American hip hop, I should say. Tupac, and what do you see there? Thug life, probably smoking a blunt there. The blunt is a cigar wrapper where the tobacco is taken out and marijuana is put in. The middle finger, a gun in his waistband, the bandana. Image of hip-hop, commercialized hip-hop. Has some negative components to that, right? Kind of antisocial things that mainstream systems fear, the ills of society. What about this? Did something like this come to mind when you think of hip-hop? Mm-hmm. Sort of the gold teeth, the gaudiness of it, the flashiness of hip-hop. This is T-Pain, if you guys don't know. How about this one? Women in hip-hop. Objectified, very revealing clothing, so on and so forth. The last one, this is one that my mother just reacts to. The sagging of the pants. She can't stand it. Every time she sees it, she just tirade, just goes off. But yeah, so again, images of hip-hop that are common, that are commercial, that oftentimes people think of automatically. So if this is hip-hop, and this is all of hip-hop is, how in the world can it be therapeutic? Where is the therapy in this? Well, I think of it this way. A saying comes to mind, a logical saying or puzzle. But elephants are gray, but not all gray things are elephants. Meaning that, yes, this is a part of hip-hop. Yes, these are images of hip-hop, but it's not all of what hip-hop is. So let's talk about that a bit more broad understanding of hip-hop. So let's delve into some of the history and its development. It was born out of the resistance movements of the United States during the civil rights era and subsequent decades. And during that time, there was a lot of, in the black community, being disenfranchised, being devalued, being ignored by mainstream systems. And what developed out of that is unrest, social unrest, and the community coming together to make their voices and their experiences known. Now, that was done in many different fashions throughout the civil rights era, through marches, through politics, through many different things. But when you break it down even more and just look at the community, specifically in the 1970s and the Bronx, the Boogie Down Bronx in New York, the communities, the projects where there were a lot of poverty, there were a lot of folks out of the job, there were in schools not a lot of funding going into the public schools, so instruments were out of the system, that students were sharing books and all those sort of things that have been a part of the community in breaking it down, so the needs weren't being met by society at large and ignored. And when you think about that, you think about children growing up in that environment, what happened was that they would use old record players and records and get together and create their own music, create their own good times. And you would have folks coming out of the projects and coming together in large communities and circles, having music playing, the sun is shining, people bring out cardboard boxes, start breakdancing. The culture, the community developed from that. So hip-hop is coming from that era, from that movement, from that community. It bloomed in American urban youth culture into a worldwide movement, incorporating music, dance, art, dress, and language. So hip-hop is more than just music. It's more than just the gangster rap or the commercialized hip hop pop, I call it nowadays. That's commercial. Again, I'm going to get in the soapbox a couple of times. So you will hear and see my biases in terms of the hip hop community and the music that is out. But hip hop is more than that. It is a real culture. It has its own language, its own rules of engagement in being. And it's coming from, again, a community that has been, for the most part, historically disenfranchised. You know, I say that it's bloomed into a worldwide movement. And I used to say a worldwide phenomena, but it's not a phenomenon anymore. It is established culture. And what that means and how that happened is because hip-hop isn't only for poor blacks in inner cities that have been devalued or voiceless. It really speaks to the individual that is in that situation, the people that have been oppressed, the people that have been again, devalued. So it's beyond just that specific group, but it really is an undercurrent, a movement of what hip-hop is and what it represents. And that's how it became a worldwide phenomenon. So globally, it's been an instrument, a platform for the articulation of resistance and nationalism in the face of oppression, racism, and social marginalization. If you read the literature in Italy, in France, in other places in the Middle East, hip-hop has been a major component in the movement of overthrowing regimes, of bringing groups together to create a collective voice against those things. So it's worldwide. And the reason that it is, again, is because that underlying component, social component of it gives folks a voice that have been previously ignored. What else about hip-hop? Talked about the therapeutic components, and that's really what I want to draw out today, that it really has a healing power, has curative powers, communicates aspirations and frustration, community aggression, creativity and street reality, style and substance. I've read numerous studies of hip-hop being used outside of urban black youth, and particularly for this area, for Arizona, how it's been used in its popularity on the res with American Indians, Native Americans, and how it's a form to talk about the historical trauma, to be able to connect with one another. And these are younger generations, so these are the folks that 20s, 30s, and younger that are putting out music to talk about that historical experience. And they talk about it, and in their songs, it really represents what's wrong, how they're being impacted by practices centuries old, and what they want to do about it. So there's movement in the music. It's acknowledging what is there. It's acknowledging that even right now, it affects me. It affects my life. It didn't stop back then. It didn't. And so with recognizing the hip-hop, that's a prime example of how it can be therapeutic and how it can really be used, how we can use it in our work in meeting the mental health needs of communities that have that specific piece of historical trauma, that have been disenfranchised, that have been devalued and ignored by mainstream culture, mainstream systems. Controversial part. Hip-hop is very diverse. In that diversity, it makes it complex. And when there's complexity, oftentimes there is controversy. So in thinking of the music specifically, the lyrics can convey messages of social and political consciousness, can be spiritually based, sexually explicit, misogynistic, aggressive and violent, glorifying the drug culture, can be about strength, can be about change. All of those different pieces are hip-hop. So yes, the language, the cursing and carrying on, the sexually explicit lyrics, the degrading of women, all of that is part of hip-hop, but again, it's not all of what hip-hop is. And it's not specific just to hip-hop, right? Like it happens in every point of society, in every culture, you'll find that. What is important to draw that out is because hip-hop has been commercialized and characterized as just this, you have to be really aware of what it brings out in you, what reactions you have, and be able to pull out what really it is and hold on to that and use it. But we'll get into that a little bit more in terms of you being facilitators of hip-hop therapy. This quote I really like. I think it speaks to the complexity of hip-hop. When it's bad, when hip-hop is bad, it's often embraced by mainstream as the entirety of the talent and the voice of the hip-hop generation. When it is good, outsiders and insiders alike misunderstand it for reasons of politics and fear. Bad hip-hop is invariably inarticulate, unpolished, amateurish, and juvenile. And I can name several music artists that would fit that. But again, that's my soapbox. We'll get to that a little later. Good hip-hop art is highly articulate, coded, transcendent, revolutionary, communicative, empowering. This is not specific to any particular ethnicity. Hip-hop is hip-hop. Can be transcendent and revolutionary and has been used as such. So I challenge you today, well, maybe throughout the week, depending on what your schedules are, go on YouTube. Google hip-hop in France. And it'll pull up numerous artists that are, I don't speak French or any other language, unfortunately, but I can still listen to the music and hear the flow of the words, and it's meaningful. I can connect to that. That resonates with me. Power of hip-hop worldwide. Now, we can talk about hip-hop. I can describe it, I can define it, but hip-hop is an experience. So, this is our first cipher for today. Anybody ever heard of a cipher in hip-hop? Okay, 2 people. What is it? What is a cipher in hip-hop?
Freestyle.
Freestyle?
Yeah.
Okay.
Going off the top of the head and
I'm sorry, say it again?
just off the top of the head, nothing written, just rapping
Right.
without just coming from what's inside, not written down, just not previously recorded, just new music that's coming straight out.
Awesome.
Same thing, just to expand upon that, it's just being in a situation where you're with a group of individuals and everybody's voicing their energy.
Right.
You know?
Voicing their energy. I like that. I think I saw another hand in the back. Anything you want to add to that? Okay. So that's what a hip-hop cipher is. Now, the definition, the Webster definition of a cipher is a secret. The noun is a secret or disguised way of writing a code. And to put it in action, it's a message that has been written, it's been encoded. I think that's a wonderful word for what a cipher is in hip-hop, where there is a group of people that come together and they're vibing together. The energy is together, and it's often in a circle, like we are sort of in right now. And depending on what's going on, there's usually a beat playing in the back. You may have some people coming in and breakdancing in the middle. You may have a couple of rappers just flowing with one another. They can be battling, but really it's about the sharing of that energy. So we're going to cipher today. I'm going to ask you, yeah, that's right. Need you to stand on up. We're going to get some energy today. I'm going to need you to just make sure the volume is okay. All right. Good morning. And this is going to be, this is a picture of a cipher, by the way. This is Justin Boa. We talk about hip-hop art. Boa is wonderful. He's one of my favorites. But this is an example of a cipher in New York. Now, I did bring my cardboard in case anybody wanted to come up and do a little something. But since I don't have a waiver for anybody to sign, we're not going to do that, okay? All right. Got some room because we're going to be moving just a little bit. All right. So if you need to just close your eyes and get into the music, that's all right. Go ahead and move. I see some eyes kind of rolling. See some movement going, all right. I see somebody else into it. Now, part of a cipher, part of what's also in hip-hop is call and response. So I'm going to ask y'all to do a little some things with me. I'm going to ask you to follow my instructions, okay? Now, if you're feeling nervous, you're feeling awkward, just shake that out. We ain't got no time for that. All right, this is hip-hop. And you're helping somebody out. Wonderful. All right, here we go. So clap your hands, everybody. Everybody, clap your hands. Clap your hands, everybody. Everybody, clap your hands. All right, now you're just going to keep on doing that. If you want to add a little something special to your two-step, to your bounce, go ahead and feel it. It's all right. Shake it off if you're nervous. We ain't got no time for that. This is our cipher. This is our group. Now, I mentioned call and response. So I'm going to ask y'all to do that. Now, on the beat, I'm going to say something, and I want you to repeat it for me. Okay? You ready? Let me see what I'm going to say. All right. Hey! I. Good. Again. Ayo. I. Now anybody, everybody, scream! Oh, y'all did! All right, thank you. You can go ahead and have a seat. I didn't think y'all were gonna scream. That was awesome. Wonderful. Now, as you're settling back in, what do you notice different about you right now than before we did our cipher? More energy. What do you notice about the group than before we did the cipher?
More connected.
More connected. This is hip hop. We commune together. We created our community. And if I would have had fun together, now imagine that you were able to talk about anything that is on your mind, about the week that you've been through that was tough, about the papers that were due, and you can say it any way you wanted to say, and you have the support of the entire group to do that. That is hip hop. That is a collective voice, validating one another's experiences, relating to one another. Michael. You're getting goosebumps. Wonderful.
You know, I grew up in that era as well, in New York.
Uh-huh.
And, you know, the thing about it is I think it was the admiration for individuals who were able to put words together that rhymed
Yes.
and had meaning as well
Yes.
behind it. And so I think that was really what stood out. It was being in a position where you could be together, but also admiring the next individual for their skills and that skill set that they brought to the table as well.
Right. And just to support what you're saying there, I would have given an example of that, but I'm not an MC whatsoever. I can't put words together like that on a beat. It just, my mind doesn't quite work like that. I appreciate it, but I can't do it. But part of that, when I talked about the musical instruments being taken out of the schools, when you even go back further to African slaves, when there were some instruments, but really all people had, they didn't own anything, all they had was their bodies and their voice. And being able to do the storytelling, to put words together, to communicate in a coded way that transcends just the regular describing of experience, but being able to use words in a way that it was bigger than the experience that people could connect to. That is skillful. That is absolutely skillful, and people appreciate it.
Do you have time for a quick question?
Sure.
Do you find that hip hop is becoming like the contemporary version of what jazz was in the 20s and the moving from ragtime into jazz into kind of blues and hip hop? Have you looked into that?
I don't think I quite understand your question, so I'm going to try and answer it, and let me know if this addresses your question. There has been movement in hip hop. From when it started, you had, how do I describe it? I'm third generation hip hop. I consider myself third generation hip hop, which is the 90s. So I grew up with Biggie Smalls, Tupac, and a lot of the big groups, right? So that's my style. So when I hear stuff that is more old school, like Curtis Blow and those sort of things, it seems kind of hokey to me. Like I appreciate it, but it's not me, my generation. When I hear the stuff now, it's still, I'm like, really? This is skills, especially the commercial stuff. Okay, soapbox later. Soapbox later. But there has been different developments and changes in the hip hop community, in the music specifically. And I think that has a lot to do with the commercialization of it, turning it into a business. So in terms of it, and if I'm hearing your question correctly, going from like traditional jazz to bebop and R&B and that sort of development and changing, yes, it happens. I think that happens in any sort of culture, any sort of music genre. But again, hip hop is more than the music.
Right.
And so there will always be that underground element, that traditional element, but it changes. It absolutely changes. Is that?
You're making me feel old because I'm a whole other generation. Because for me, I was first exposed with Gil Scott-Heron, and that was
yeah.
way back.
Yeah.
And one of the first concerts I saw was Gil Scott-Heron opening up for Bob Marley.
Oh, really?
And you know, Marley was huge, but Scott-Heron actually stole the show. This was in Berkeley.
Really?
And that was the first time I was exposed to spoken word poetry music.
Mhm.
I was totally mesmerized. Totally mesmerized. So.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I came through with, I guess, the different generations from when it started, in terms of recognized in the Bronx, New York at that time. I was a young kid at the time, but at the same time, you knew what was going on, and that became a part of your daily operation. Was that era, the Curtis Blows, the Kool Hercs, and all of that, and then it evolved into the Tupac Shakurs and all that.
Yeah.
So I've gotten a chance to live through the different transformation of the music as well. But as she was saying, it's really not just all about the music, but I remember when we used to break dance as well, and then the graffiti, and then the dress code, and
Yes.
all of that was a part of it, and so it was how you lived. And just in that, you felt like you could voice your displeasure or your excitement about whatever it was that was going on in the culture at that time,
Right.
or in society at that time, rather. And so it's evolved into it's being universal now. I remember when it was a black thing or African American thing, but now it's universal. As
Right.
she said, you can go to any country, and I mean they are fully
Serious.
engaged,
Right.
and it doesn't matter about what color, what creed, what have you. People are just celebrating music. I think that's why music is so universal. It touches everybody because of the energy.
And again, to piggyback off of that, it's even more than the music. It's a feel, it's an environment, it's that energy beyond the music. So if you didn't have any music and you just had some folks freestyling, that community, that cipher will form, right? And they can talk about, just like you said, the political stuff, the heavy stuff, or they can just party. I mean, there are a lot of just like party songs just to have a good time, and it's recognizable because it's common and it's part of the culture. So it has its place. For each situation that you're going through, hip-hop can be there. So why hip-hop? Why not just call this music therapy with a specific genre of music being used? And we talked about this, touched on this already. It's because hip-hop is more than just the music, because it really pulls on an energy of the human spirit, the resiliency, the creativity that can connect folks. But hip-hop is culturally sensitive, innovative, engaging, and empowering therapeutic tool for individuals, particularly those who have been disenfranchised from mainstream systems. The objective of using hip-hop as a therapeutic tool is to build a positive sense of self, to draw on the strengths of the individual and the strengths of their culture as a means to develop solutions to struggles and validate experiences. Said this many different ways already. Okay, so this is a big point that I wanted to make sure that you hear it and take it with you in thinking about this. Hip-hop therapy then primarily, in the literature, primarily uses the music form of hip-hop to facilitate individuals' engagement in therapy. So again, that accessibility point, evoke emotion, facilitate behavioral change, develop critical thinking, validate experience, and reshape lives. So a lot of things can happen in using hip-hop as a modality and doing all of these things. What makes it unique, again, compared to other modalities and interventions, is that it really allows the therapy to be accessible. Be able to really create that safe environment, that safe holding environment for folks to really be able to let down their defenses and do some work. It does draw on music therapy, bibliotherapy, narrative therapy, and cognitive behavior therapy. I call hip-hop therapy a modality and not necessarily a theory. It's because the theory is still being refined and worked out of why it works. So I can't speak to that right now today because it's not quite there yet, but it's going to move there. But some of the same principles that are at work in these other modalities and these other theories is a part of hip-hop and why it's effective. As facilitators, there are some core things that's not different from other modalities, but there's some core things that you have to be able to bring to the table. An appreciation of hip-hop. That may be a big thing. I've had numerous conversations with individuals that don't like hip-hop, think it's just a lot of racket with words over it. And of course, we have very heated debates about that. But there has to be an appreciation of hip-hop. Again, not just the music, but what it represents. A knowledge of that human experience. Genuine. You don't have to, let me put it this way, you have to be who you are authentic. If you come in thinking or trying to show that you know everything about hip hop or you down or anything like that, people can see through that. If it's not real, it's not going to fit. Now what that means is that you don't have to know everything about hip hop. You don't have to know everything about the culture. You don't have to come from hip hop culture. I said I'm third generation hip hop. I know some big names, popular names. I know a few underground hip hop artists, but I can't name all of the artists from the 1970s on up. I can't do it. I just don't know it. But what makes it effective for me is because I really believe in the power of hip hop. I believe in the therapeutic uses of it, and that makes a difference. That's the genuineness. So if you don't know hip hop, that's okay. You don't have to go out and buy a lot of CDs or do research on Wikipedia of different artists. Not what you have to do. Boundaries. If you're going to use this form, you got to make sure that you put it in the context of therapy. That it's for therapy. It's not for party time. It's not just let's sit down and listen to music together and talk about it a little bit, but really being able to set the boundaries of how you're going to use this, how you're going to process it, so that it is really used in a therapeutic context. That makes sense in terms of boundaries? Wonderful. The big thing, self-awareness. And this is a piece of really acknowledging the social components of hip-hop therapy and the communities from which it has come. So I want to do an exercise with you. If you have a paper, pen, go ahead and bring that out, because we're going to journal a little bit. Our second cipher today. On your own, we would like you to take a couple of minutes to write down unfiltered, free conscious flow, without editing, just real, genuine. What are your primary thoughts, assumptions, and feelings about hip-hop culture and hip-hop as a therapeutic tool? So take a couple of minutes to do that. Primary thoughts, no filtering, no editing, just really your thoughts, experiences, attitudes, assumptions of the culture and in hip-hop as a therapeutic tool. You're really thinking about this. It's wonderful. Go ahead and finish up your own thoughts. Now what I'm going to ask you to do is to break into some small groups. And I think we have enough folks for maybe about four or five people per group. Maybe we can have from Sophia to Dr. McCain, if you guys can be a group. And then perhaps, I'm sorry, I don't know. Mark and Stephanie to be a group. Then if we can have Haley, the gentleman next to you, and then Emily to form a group. And then that back corner, if you can turn around and form a group that way. What I'm going to ask you to do in your groups, you can elect a note taker or you can just talk, but really share what you wrote. What are your thoughts, assumptions, idea about hip-hop? what are your thoughts, assumptions, attitudes about hip hop as a therapeutic tool? And I want to see if you can come up with, if you have common thoughts, experiences. So talk together about that.
For me to understand that jumped out is how people dance.
So like that's no different, but like everything is like the same range. There's gonna be stuff that will kick out there like this is what I'm going through right now, and like it really I I don't get that, but I understand like the like I get that and like
empowering and releasing
like talked about
releasing emotions and feelings and thoughts. I mean, the way it is together, that brief experience of reading it, I wanted to kind of share what went on in my mind. I think that is a strong component.
It sounds like conversations are ending and wrapping up. Maybe.
I wonder what.
I'm going to ask you to go ahead and finish your thoughts. And then we're going to come back together. Share with me. It sounded like some great comments I overheard, and in these two groups I couldn't quite hear what was going on back there, but share with me. What did you come up with? Do we need to stand up again? Like, what is this? Wait, oh, let me see.
Can we cipher it?
Oh, I don't have any other instruments. I'm sorry.
We talked about the storytelling of hip hop, and Mark pointed out how the positive parts are kind of being left out in mainstream hip hop,
Yes.
and we're just focusing on the repetition, which is what I call just repeating the same phrase over and over and over with a different beat. Or
Yes.
very also Simon Says. I think a lot of the songs are just Simon Says.
Yeah.
But how it's storytelling, and you can pick out the different artists and still relate no matter who it is. You can relate to the story that's happening in the truth.
Yes. Good. And you were on my soapbox a bit too, so all right. It's good to have company. Thank you.
Well, I agree. It's Simon Says and different beats.
Yeah, we also talked about like the mainstream implications of hip hop too, just how the music that really glorifies violence and drugs, that's getting advocated by every news source that talks about it and
Yes.
speaks about the controversy of it. But in some of my favorite hip hop, like the rappers are much more socially conscious.
Yes.
Like Talib Kweli or
Yes.
Nas, like some of my favorite artists. And I shared with them like how some artists they take a back road where they'll release songs that do that, glorify violence, glorify women, or misogynistic women,
Yes.
drugs, and then
Yes.
they'll come out later and they'll
Yes.
release more socially conscious songs, like
Right.
just to take a back road, but they need to get their foot in the door before they can get the message out.
Exactly. And before we go on, I just want to say, if you name a certain artist, a specific artist, you have to do a verse. So you said Talib Kweli. I'm just kidding. You panic. Well, okay.
Yeah, I was one of the. I used to freestyle a lot.
Oh, really?
We used to do that. Like,
Oh.
we used to do the big.
Yeah, right.
At the end of our. Put down my
Awesome.
But yeah, we still do it occasionally.
We should put them on the floor, shouldn't we? Bring the cipher back. But we might have a little bit of time left over.
You talked about the self-expression and the community and the engagement parts of it.
Good.
You know, just how rapidly you can take a group of people who supposedly don't know each other
Mm-hmm.
and create a common bond, even without words or without expression. Just a little piece that you did. And what a powerful engagement strategy that is. And you know, for me, what was always intriguing is the parent which is maybe why I like motivational interviewing too, now I think about it,
Mhm.
the apparent contradiction of in your face but inviting.
Yes.
And how it can feel attacking, but you were saying it's really engaging on my terms. And then when it's your turn, how quickly people drop and turn over to someone else.
Yes.
Without fight, without dispute.
Mm-hmm.
I had my time, now it's your time.
Right.
And how easily that flows with people in an interaction like that.
Yes.
Fascinating.
Powerful.
Powerful and empowering.
And empowering.
Mhm.
Absolutely. Other thoughts? Well, I'm glad to hear you pulling out some of the positive aspects of hip hop and how it can be used. But I'm more interested in hearing more about you, your thoughts. Put it out there. What for you? What is hip hop? Is it all negative? Is it scary?
It's energy, and like any kind of energy, what makes it negative or positive is what you do with it.
Mhm.
It's not inherent to the music or atomic energy or whatever. It's just energy. And you can do with it, play with it, build with it, destroy with it.
Yeah.
It's up to you what you do with it, kind of like you were saying. You know, a business deal to get money to fund your business and
Right.
your own social consciousness. It's the same as energy.
Shelley?
One topic that our group chatted about, and I think when we have this bonding experience through music and hip hop can offer, it also reminds us that this is the real thing versus marketing.
Ah, yes.
And you know, it's amazing how once we can then parallel that with our clients, then we could even draw in other comparisons, like which will end up creating self-esteem and confidence because they're determining what is real in my world, not what's airbrushed and marketed and lifestyles that are promoted that's not real. So I think that is really powerful.
Yes. Thank you for saying that.
But my first thought, like when I think of hip hop, is like I immediately go to dance, and hip hop in particular for me gets me out of my comfort zone because I'm more classically ballet trained. So I'm like, so it gets me out of my comfort zone. But then it made me start thinking, what are we doing in therapy? We're getting people out of their comfort zones and
Yes.
making them face their pain and face their, and it puts them in a really uncomfortable place.
Yes.
So that was just interesting to me.
One of the things I want to point out, I think a lot of our clients don't think that we can relate to the culture that they're going through in terms of the music that they listen to, the way that they dress, the way that they talk, because they look at us as separate then. Sometimes and it can be from race to age to it does absolutely, education level or what have you. So they don't believe that you can connect with them on that level. But if you're open, if they know that you're open and that you're not judging them because of art that they have embraced, whether it be good or bad, when you can connect and say, I'm open to this way of life for you, I respect it, and I want to connect with you in that manner, whether we pick out a certain song that speaks, because it's all about storytelling. It's about, listening to what is being said, trying to listen to someone's voice. But when you can do that, I think that's where the therapy comes into piece, where you can start to make that connection and start to be in a position where you can have dialogue and they can say, wow, I never thought that you would understand where I was coming from with my music or my way of life or my lifestyle or my dress code or the way that I talk or what have you. So that's something to look at.
So it may be a way of letting go of all your judgments.
Yeah.
And just like perceive people where they are.
Absolutely.
So it's very mindful.
Absolutely.
And exactly why I asked you to do this exercise and why that self-awareness, you being cognizant of what your thoughts are about hip hop, so that you can be able to let go of any biases, any judgments, and just be with the individual, because it's about the relationship. That's what we're talking about here, is the relationship. Being able to connect and engage and deal with whatever perceptions are being put on you. Music can help, hip-hop music can help lower those defenses that an individual or individuals can come in with. And you can create that group, that shared experience together, and using that energy, again, to facilitate change. Wonderful. So let's talk about some practical applications of hip hop. What does it look like when you're using it? You're experiencing some of it today. It can be used with groups, with individuals in long-term or short-term therapy. When preparing or thinking about using this, you really want to be thoughtful, particularly because the research is incomplete and there's not a lot of generalizability, but I'll get into that more specifically in a couple of slides here. But you want to assess the interest in hip hop culture, not just hip hop music, but hip hop culture. That's all I need to say about that, really. If it makes sense, if I wouldn't go, before I came to Phoenix, I've been here about a year, a little over a year now, but I was in Southwest Virginia. That's rural Appalachian Virginia. In assessing the interest in hip hop culture, it's not there, so I didn't use it. For the most of the clients, the patients that I work with, I wouldn't bring in hip hop necessarily. There were a couple of younger patients that I worked with that were part or knew some of the music, and we could have dialogue and conversations with and do a bit of familial therapy and connect, because I was an outsider there. Do you know what I mean? I was young black female professional in Confederate Virginia South, okay? So I had to find a way to connect without losing myself. So it helped me, and also helped with the therapeutic work that I was doing in the state hospital. So what I'm saying there is that you don't have to have an African American Latino male between the ages of 14 and 21 for this to work. It can work with anyone, because again, it's that wide worldwide movement that's there. So hip hop is, it just is, and it can be effective. So, but you really want to be thoughtful about it and assess if there is an interest. Could it really be effective?
That's exactly one of the things that I wrote about the culture, like it's universal.
Yes.
So I feel that's how I feel about it. And I'm thinking, when you talk about the interest and assess the interest, and I wouldn't consider myself, highly interested in hip hop or heavy metal. But recently I've been introduced to both in a way, and it sparked interest immediately. And it was something that, especially the heavy metal, I was given an album and told to listen to it. And I was like, I don't like heavy metal, at all. It was so powerful and just a special experience for me to allow myself to experience something that I thought I didn't like.
Yes.
But then experiencing that I actually liked it, and in a way that kind of helped me, and I'm thinking that maybe you can introduce it to people even if you think that they're not interested, because it's so easy to engage in, particularly in hip hop. Maybe not so heavy metal, but particularly hip hop. So it can be like an opening up,
Yes.
experience
Absolutely.
for people.
Absolutely.
I don't think, what I'm trying to say is, I don't think that you have to, keep it on the table if you feel that, and people tell you I'm not interested in hip hop.
Right.
It can still be, experienced.
Right, so being responsive to the needs of the group or the individual that you're working with, but it doesn't make hip-hop therapy off the table.
Yeah.
Right. But you definitely want to be aware and assessing, okay, is there interest for this particular mode of working? Especially if you're at a stuck point. It can really help move people. And while, again, the literature primarily talks about hip-hop therapy in the music form, I want to broaden that to the movement, to the art, maybe not the fashion, but those other elements can be also very powerful. Another point of engagement, the creative therapy. Oh, last point. So, and again, with being thoughtful, you want to gather your materials and resources. Think through the songs that you would choose if you're doing music. Think through the images. Think through the movement that you want to engage people in. And set the objectives. Will this particular intervention help you meet the objective? As much as you can predict that. So what it can do, when you decide to use it, you assess the interest, you have your self-awareness, you're ready to be genuine, you figure out a song, you figure out the activity that you want to use, particularly if you use a song. Now, I would advocate for not necessarily getting the clean or the radio version of songs. So let all of the words come out, let all of the vulgarity, if it's there, come out, because that is grist for the mill in therapy. And it's applicable because that's what may be in people's lives. Okay, to sanitize stuff, Is that their reality? Are they going to go home and still hear the same words coming from their community? You got to help them think through that. Okay, so you want to help them identify and process negative themes in hip hop music and culture. Because again, it may be reflected in their everyday lives. It's not this commercial, MTV, BET, TV One, music videos. It's not out there. The movement started from reality, from people's lives, right? It's part of their everyday living and identity. Assist to deconstruct such themes as related to the individual and their context, and then help them construct positive themes that promote appropriate decision making and managing positive attitudes and behaviors. And there are a lot of different things you can do with that, with journaling, discussions, performances, all sorts of things. So those are just some of the general practical applications you want to think of in figuring out what to use, how to use it, and will it be effective. We have another one. So I brought a song that I like, and this is where you as facilitators can have more control in choosing the music that you want to listen to, because you would never hear me playing Waka Flocka or any of those. You just will never hear it. So I would like you to take a moment and to listen. You can close your eyes, you can take notes if you want, but listen to the next song here. Because I'm going to ask you to basically prepare a group activity or individual activity using this song, and it's called Dear God. Dear God, I'm trying hard to reach you. Dear God, I see your face and all I do. Sometimes ahead and take a minute. What I would like you to write down and think about, what themes would you pull out to use in a group activity, individual activity? What emotions could be evoked? What critical thinking could be developed? What experiences can be validated? And what behaviors can be changed? If you want me to play it again, I can do that while you're thinking. Play it again, I get it. Okay. We'll do that again. Wrong one. There you go. Yes, this is the Roots. Oh, you do? Yeah. First reactions to that song.
Mine are mixed because part of it is, if I were to use it with a group or individuals, actually admitting that there's some things we can't change, even though we're trying to. There's some things that we can't change, but at the same time I get that feeling of, well, you got to keep fighting anyways. Even though we can't change them, it doesn't mean that we really can't. You know?
When I hear you share that, what comes to mind is frustration, which is what I believe our clients in the community feels.
Mhm.
So that's validating.
Mhm.
Absolutely. You don't have the answers. You don't. And we'll just leave it there. So yes, I believe people will be able to relate to you in that frustration and that conflict. Like, is it ever going to change? This is hard. It's probably not, but I still got to keep going. I still got to wake up every day. And that one line about I get off of work and I go right back to work. There you go.
When I think of hip hop, I usually, my first thought was outrage. But this song elicited sadness, pain, questioning my belief, how painful it is to believe, to try to reach out and cry for help, and maybe there's something wrong with me. And I need my head checked. But how come there's all these atrocities if the world, I mean, just helplessness, I guess.
Yeah, that is absolutely there, and all of those emotions can be evoked. Absolutely.
And guilt. I'm sorry. Forgive me if I doubt, but how can I keep on believing?
Right. It's a spirituality comes out in
if I look at what's going on around.
Yes.
But I think the song validates in a powerful way just pain and suffering, and that life, that's what life is, and that it recognizes that. So in a way, I think for someone who is feeling all these emotions, it can be soothing to have that validated through music.
That's an interesting word, soothing. That's interesting. I'm thinking through that. The word that came to mind for me is relief. Like, I'm not alone in this. This is not just
exactly.
me.
Yeah, you relate.
Yeah.
And that's, that's so important.
And
So that's one of the things that I wrote, loneliness.
Loneliness.
And to listen to that maybe helps that a little bit or eases that.
Right.
For me, yeah.
And, and at the same time, it's very empowering because he's starting a dialogue with God. He's asking those questions and expressing his point of view.
And I don't even think it has to be, I don't believe in God. I would never pray to God if I feel bad. But still, I didn't think about it as it was being spoken about God.
Right.
It was just this,
Universe.
Yeah.
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 I just love the transition of it because I can't help but see our lighthouse teenage kids. Because that first piece is there, that profound pain. That first piece is just profoundly painful, longing and painful. And then you see, you generate the energy out of that. That strong questioning, challenging, if you will.
Yeah.
And then that needs to happen.
Yes.
That needs to happen.
Yes.
For you to get back to that other piece of rebuilding some sense of faith and hope. you
Yes.
know. I love the transition of that song. I love it.
Kind of that, the transition of like the kind of more smoother, slower part, and then like the faster rapping. I liked how that worked together. Just it really.
One of the things I like about this song particularly is that in that first verse, talking about worldwide problems, and I think that is important to highlight because if you think about some of the more mass public media perceptions of people that are living in poverty, that are in the projects, that there's a stereotype that those folks are selfish and they don't want to give, or they just want to take and things like that. But what this highlights to me is that there's still a concern. Like, yes, all of that is happening right now in my life, but it's connected to something much bigger and their problems much bigger. So to me, it really brings out that interconnectedness of while I'm, yes, in this situation and maybe marginalized, but I'm still connected to people that are outside of this community and it still affects me.
Right.
I really like that part, that verse of bringing that out. And that's something that you can bring out in a group discussion, in an individual. What was it like listening to that together as a group? What was that like?
We're all in the same predicting. I mean, we're all in the same. In the world, the state of the world, the pain, the suffering.
Okay. I'm gonna jump in just right here for a moment. What feeling do you have with listening to that in the group? I'm asking you to offer something here.
I think like more cohesiveness of the group, like maybe maybe in a way we get to know each other a little bit better, you know, in a different way than just coming and listening. You know, it's I guess shared experience,
Yeah.
and then we have a dialogue about it, and it you know makes it even richer. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
As I was listening to it, kind of like what Sophia pointed out, the spirituality of it, and everyone coming with a different perspective of their own spirituality. And so as I was listening to it, I was very much aware of where my perspective is, but then it made me start looking at, okay, how does this person look at it from their religion standpoint or spirituality or their identity? And it was all very much like just questioning a personal identity, both in yourself and then those around you, of how do they perceive this song. So it was that connectedness of we all have different perspectives, but we're all together in it too.
Let me piggyback on what you said. I think it was the same for me in terms of asking the question, did everybody get out of it what I got out of it? And it could be in different, I know we all pull out different things that stand out to us, but that's what was going on in my mind as I was receiving information, and I'm saying, wow, it's powerful. Is everybody getting what I'm getting? I'm hoping that everybody's getting what I'm getting. Simple as that.
Wonderful.
To build on the 3 comments, I felt that such a powerful topic, yet this is a safe place where if we get similar emotions or not, different perspectives, and that parallels to the therapy session, that we are creating a safe space. It could be one of us, we could and whatever topics that even being taboo to question God for some people. And to allow them to enter that safe place and not be judged, which is what I felt the room would be able to do.
I knew we were all feeling feeling emotions, deep emotions. And the same thing as Mary said, been wondering if I'm different from others or if others have felt the same, but that came later. And also the feeling of safety that, especially now with discussion. So it was a shared experience. Very powerful.
You know, before I started, we got into the presentation, I asked you to be aware of your reactions. Let me just share mine because it's quite powerful for me. Now, I listen to this song a lot. One of my favorite groups is The Roots. If you ever watch Jimmy Kimmel.
What is the name of the artist?
The Roots.
The Roots.
If you ever watch Jimmy Kimmel, The Roots are on Jimmy Kimmel Live. But anyway, I listen to this song a lot, but I had a profound experience, especially when I started hearing your experiences, and it was like heavy on my chest, and it was just raw emotion. And experiencing that with you, this is really powerful stuff. A lot can come up. If you choose to do this in a group or an individual session, being able to process that and share your experience is a part of the facilitating change, evoking the emotion, putting folks back together, because again, it can be very powerful. And then developing that critical thinking and talking about behavioral change. So thank you for sharing this with me. We're going to keep moving, because I have another cipher, another experience. So I said that music form of hip hop is often used in therapy, but I would want to extend that to the art form. So when I chose some of these images, the way I would use it, and I don't think I haven't read any places that would use the images or talk about images in facilitating change. Good morning. So when you look at this, and let me go through the images first. So this is the image of a female sitting. It's done by a local artist. This is done by Kadir Nelson, one of my favorite artist. Now, the way I would use this, and I'm going to ask you to do now, have a piece of paper. It's going to be somewhat of a projective tool. I'm not going to ask you to share what you come up with, but I would like you to pick one of the images. And I would like for you to tell me a story about the character in the image. I would like you to pick the character, write about how they're feeling, what they're thinking, what happened just before this image, during, and after. Tell me a story.
That's easy.
I almost want to give you some music.
Give us some music.
Let's see what I have. I'm only going to give you a couple more minutes, so let's see what I can find in that time. Okay. So again, I would choose not to use the radio version, so you might want to turn it down just a little bit. So this is one of my favorite artists. I like his old stuff a bit better, but I like his new stuff. So see if you can, you know who this is.
Yeah. Rockefeller. We invite you to something epic, you know? Where we hustle out of a sense of hopelessness, sort of a desperation. With that desperation, we become addicted, sort of like the fiends we accustomed to serving.
Gosh, how fitting his images. I'm thinking, like, wow. A bit of my own protection, I guess.
We offer our lives. What do you bring to the table? While I'm watching every nigga watching me closely. My shit is butter for the bread they wanna toast me. I keep my head open up where they supposed to be. You don't sleep, I'm trying. I feel wired like codeine. These days a brother gotta admire me from 4 fiends away. My pain when shit was quick to see. From selling cane to brains with pride to a fricassee. Can't lie, at the time it never bothered me. At the bar, getting my dog on properly. My squad and me lack of respect for authority. Laughing hard, happy to be escaping poverty. However brief, I know this game got valleys and peaks. Expectation for this, but precipitation, we stack chips, my heart bleed. The youth I used to be, soon to see a million, no more. Big Willie, my game is wrong, prefer you call me William. Illin' for revenue, break for lemon life. Channel 7 News, round 7 Jews, hands hitting the mic. Forgetting all I ever knew, convenient amnesia. I suggest you call my lawyer, I know the procedure. Lock my body, can't trap my mind easily. Explain why we adapt the crime. I'd rather die enormous than live dormant, that's how we own it. Live at the main event, I better trip them out, we on it. Presidential suites, my residential for the weekend. Confidentially speaking in code since I sent you vegan. The NSS rental, don't be fooled, my game is mental. We both out of town, dog, what you trying to get into? Viva, Las Vegas, see ya later at the crab tables. Meet me by the one that starts a G-up. This way no fraud, Willie's present, gambling they re-up. And we can have a pleasant time, sipping margaritas, G-G-G. Can I live?
that is from Jay-Z's first album, Classic, and it's called Can I Live. Anybody catch any of the lyrics in that?
Absolutely.
That was a new one? You like it?
I was actually watching a documentary on him a couple days ago. Crazy. Right now you played that too. But yeah, and they were going through this actual album.
Yeah,
And you saw that one, you know what I'm talking about? Yeah. So it's powerful. And he's talking about the life that he chose to live because he had no choice in the matter of what have you, growing up in the neighborhood. He was talking about selling drugs and understanding that the rules that come along with it as well, knowing that it's bad, and they really don't want to do it, but this is what they had to do. So that's where he goes with that.
So this is an example of a couple of things. You probably don't want to mix the music and the image because you can get distracted and not really be able to focus on one. But yes, that's one of the reasons I love that song, because we can spend really the rest of our time today breaking that down, talking about the social elements of it, the struggle that Jay-Z is talking about, that tension about I'm going to break the law, I'm going to sell drugs because that's what I need to do because I'm in the projects and I don't really have any other options available to me that are really accessible to me. So we can talk a lot about those things, and you can talk about that in group. Another reason probably not to mix mediums is that when I first played the song and I look back at these images, it changed the stories I would have told about these images. So, but I just wanted to give you something. But again, probably not best to do both. How do I want to ask you about this? Because this is a projective technique. I'm asking you to storytell here. So pieces of you are coming out in the stories that you've written. And the same thing will happen with the clients that you work with. And then you can process, ask them to tell the story, and then begin to ask them about their story and how it relates to them. What parts of their story are similar to their own lives? You can do it that way. But I want to be more general in asking you to share what are some of the things that could be attached to some of these images here. What are some of the things that could come out?
Oppression.
I'm sorry?
Oppression.
Oppression? Which one are you looking at?
Top right.
Top right. So the guy coming out of the room. Okay. What else?
I chose strength for that one.
Strength. Strength. All right.
So strength and growth.
Yes.
I chose vulnerability for some of them.
For some of them?
For the woman especially, but then the top right as well. I know that one.
All right.
And for the woman, I chose like helpless and hopeless and isolated. It just identifies really with one of my clients and how she and her mom are feeling.
Powerful.
And my story kept changing. It was interesting. When I first looked, I saw one thing. I kept looking at the woman, and then I said, "Oh no, maybe it could be something else." So I could see her seduction, or her being naked and stripped of any covering. So yeah, the vulnerability, but still some sort of connection. Or then I looked at it and said, no, it could be introspection. I kept seeing different things in the image.
So that's why that story would be really important for folks to tell, because it can be anything. Anything can be put on it, right? So having them to tell a complete story, to write a complete story, will give you more to work with and to pull out what's really going on right now. What's some of the core issues that are coming up? You were going to...
I was going to say the top right is a breakthrough for me. And, you know, the story that I was seeing was as an individual who was held back for so long and was hopeless at some point in time, but finally got enough courage, enough aspiration to say enough is enough, and he broke through his pain and being held back, and the light signifies power and empowerment, and he's at a point where he's in a position of strength, saying that now's my time. That's what I see.
I focused on the left one, and
the story that I ended up writing was one of carrying a great burden or weight, of loneliness, of a long journey of where you're going or where you're coming from, and no matter where you're going or where you're coming from, there's some sadness there, and that you just have to carry this weight with you. So that's one that spoke out to me, that one. And
it's interesting because it's like he has the weapon in his, or the tool in his arms, but he just doesn't have the strength to come through.
Wow. All right. I got a completely different view on that. I really was struck by a mane on a lion, that there was a lot of pride in that picture. And that he's found what he needed, you know, expression, and almost saying is like, this is how I do it. This is.
But wouldn't he carry his head higher if he was proud?
He's like.
He's burdened. It's obvious.
Yeah, I see it as a three-pronged process. I think the female is, in my viewpoint, is looking at it from a wishful thinking, purposeful kind of look in terms of wishing for the males to be free, and the top right is the guy breaking free, and the guy on the left is after he has broken free and is now on a journey.
Awesome. Wow, okay, so I didn't even, you helped pull out something for me. And showing all three at the same time, it can be a collective story, absolutely.
Yeah.
I didn't think about that, thank you. If that's what your goal is, and presenting this to a group
She's
or
kind of
individual.
good looking too. I was.
Well, okay.
That's the yellow light, Brad. That's the yellow light. You know what I'm saying? That's the yellow light, Brad.
Damn, brother.
I'm trying to help brother out over here.
Okay. So you can choose to show an individual picture for everyone to talk about if it's in a group format, or you can do a collage of sorts. But you definitely want to allow for time for that story to develop and the process afterwards. And thank you, Shelley and Sophia, for that exchange, because that is something also you have to be mindful of in managing when that comes out, because each individual story is that individual's truth. They don't always agree. People see different things, which is another piece, grist for the mill in group process. Okay, so let's dive into some of the literature. The majority of the literature investigating the use of hip-hop, again, mostly the music form of it, is conducted in the fields of social work, education, and creative art fields. And there's also, of course, the own body of literature in terms of what hip-hop is and the history of hip-hop and things like that. But in terms of in the empirical research, in the journal articles, this is where most of the work has been done. Missing there is the field of psychology. Problematic for me. And I'll get into that in just a little bit in terms of the limitations and my own frustrations with the process. Again, it's mostly used in music form, and they're primarily exploratory studies on urban, non-white adolescents and young adults that have been characterized or described as being delinquent or at risk. I'll go into detail a little bit later. There has been some positive effects noted across studies, that there has been, depending on the population, whether it's in an inpatient home, whether it's in the criminal justice system, whether it's in group homes, whether it's in school settings, that across the board they talk about an increase in positive peer relationships, improved self-concept, a decrease in risk-taking behaviors, and enhancing critical thinking. So all of the studies, again, it's primarily been done with inner city urban youth of color, mostly African American and Latino, in terms of the empirical data. It's been used in inpatient settings, again, to help folks with behavioral changes, adolescents that is. It's been used in teaching HIV prevention and awareness. So at the prevention level, hip hop's been used, the music has been used for that. And in the school setting primarily, I've seen a lot of the data in addressing bullying behaviors or truancy or those sort of behaviors, again, in that urban community of color.
That's interesting because the predominant individuals who listen to hip hop are white.
Yes. So when you're looking at the sale of music, the hip hop music, it's in rural, suburban areas, white consumers. But in terms of the studies themselves, and in hip hop being thought of as a therapeutic tool, legitimized as a therapeutic tool, only in these areas, in these contexts with these group of individuals, which is a major limitation, I believe. Major limitation. So mostly they're case studies, so we don't have any standardized protocols. Everybody's doing their own method of applying hip-hop music in a therapeutic context, which limits the generalizability. And also continues to reinforce the question of legitimacy of hip-hop being used to facilitate change, to engage, and to empower. Now, I said I have some frustrations with hip-hop therapy. I've been reading about, studying it on my own, 6-7 years now. So from undergrad, senior undergrad, throughout. I tried to bring it into my practicum experiences, my clinical field training experiences, and I could never use it because I didn't have supervisors that felt competent enough to supervise the work, which is absolutely ethical. Let me just put that out there. However, there was still no interest. I could do presentations in class, I could talk with my supervisors about it, but it wouldn't allow me to use music, hip-hop therapy, in this fashion. I believe, my opinion, is because of the misconception of what hip-hop is. And that is in the field of psychology, in the mental health field, and limits what we're able to do in terms of providing services and addressing the mental health needs of communities. We're limiting ourselves, we're tying our hands because of a social misconception of what it is.
What is the difference between hip hop and Bach?
I'm sorry, hip hop and why?
And Bach.
And Bach.
Yeah, I mean, what is the difference? I mean, if you're using music as a therapeutic tool, what makes a difference what type of music it is, if it is pleasing or acceptable to the person who's listening?
And that's a beautiful question. It goes right at the heart of the questions of legitimacy, and it goes right at the heart of hip hop in general, because it has been so characterized and disseminated as being the epitome of the social ills, the problem with this group of people. It's been pathologized, it's been described as problematic. And that is the pervasive theme and description of hip hop. So if you have that, if you have a small group of people that are willing to do the work, to say, no, hey, wait, listen, it takes time to begin to change that, which is, a banner that I'm wanting to take up, because I think that it can be very powerful. But the question of what's the difference between hip hop and Bach in terms of music, it's because it's for the poor black folks or the poor Latino folks. That's not legitimate. That can't be used in therapy.
So
what's
that's
interesting
just negative.
It's kind of interesting that you picked Bach, because Bach's been accused of being a jazz musician hiding in classical form because he used syncopation.
Exactly.
And so I love the analogy. I know you know that because you're a musician. But it's interesting, people, you don't get the support for that. But if you were to talk to people generically about music therapy, they would be so engaged.
Right.
Because they're looking at music therapy as soothing and expressive, and so it really speaks to the fact that there's a bias specifically in this genre.
Yes.
Because the idea of music therapy is almost universally accepted.
Yes.
But when you move it to hip hop therapy, there's like, whoa, wait. Okay. So
But also, but Bach, when he first started writing and stuff, I mean, he was not seen as somebody who you want to listen to. That was he was almost like blasphemy.
Yeah. He used Heaven Forgets syncopation. Yeah. Instead of just 2-4-2-4, he was doing offbeat stuff. That's
I mean, that was like sinful. I mean, it was like, it was a another level of looking at things. I think that the process here is that most individuals who, whether it's hip hop, R&B, classical, jazz, doesn't really matter. I think that the utilization of that depends on the listener, again, only. individuals who are limited, who can't see that, I think, are either they're just into a blind situation, or it offends them because they don't like it themselves.
Right.
But I think hip hop got a bad name because of gangster rap, and that's what everybody gets all bent out of shape about is the whole gangster rap and I want to shoot you, or using profanity in the lyrics and that type of thing. I think that tarnished the actual process of hip hop.
In terms of its acceptance universally or in popular culture. Absolutely. But I think to take that a step further, I think it started before gangster rap. Because hip hop was really born out of out of communities that were marginalized, out of communities that were devalued and ignored and described as being the ills of society. I think that is a major piece as well. But when it started to be glorified in terms of when the gangster rap came on the scene, when the people that were speaking about their everyday experiences, life that had been happening for years on end, and that became popular and played on the radio, that's when the bad name really began to grow and really was set in stone.
I find it interesting, though, because I was just driving on the street just this morning, and there was this kid who appeared to be Caucasian, and he was driving one of those, what's that little mouse car?
Mini Cooper?
Oh,
the Kia. The
black sheep?
The exterminator cars.
Kia Soul.
Orkin?
Yeah, Kia Soul. The Kia Soul. And he was booming, some rap music, and I thought it was hilarious. I looked over at him and was like, "Are you kidding me?" I mean, that car was vibrating. But I thought it was interesting that the crossover.
Yes.
From the inner city black youth with hip hop, it was founded actually by, I think, by Q in New York. Isn't it accurate?
It's from a brother named Herc in the Bronx as well.
Yeah.
Kool Herc. He was the first individual.
What, Quincy wasn't in that?
Nah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, I'm glad that you brought that up because we talked a bit about that. So I'm going to ask for you all to respond and engage Dr. Bayless on that point in terms of the crossover. What have you heard today? What is your thinking now about why that crossover has happened?
Well, for me, I can't separate from the social political piece.
Yes.
Because I've heard hip hop and rap be equated to the combination of Martin Luther King and Malcolm X, okay? Where, you're not hearing this, so you're gonna hear this. And then mainstream says, okay, we need to get away from that, so we need to embrace this, okay? And one not being hip hop / Martin Luther King, being driven to the acceptability to some degree in mainstream because of fear. We can deal with hip hop people. These gangster rap, we got to get out of this, okay?
But you go back in time when R&B first came out, when they first started having R&B, Atlantic Records, Stack Records, all those companies. There was what they call a chitlin circuit, okay, and only black music was played. This is in the 50s, before you guys are born. In the 50s, they would not play, other than Nat King Cole and a couple other individuals that sung, quote, white music.
Right.
Okay, they would not play R&B. If you want to hear R&B, you had to go to another station, or typically a southern. We used to get it late at night in Ohio, and
or in prostitution houses.
Yeah, that's true too. That's true too. But when famous groups such as the Impressions, the Temptations, and Shirelles, it goes all the way back. Four Tops, the Ohio Players, all those guys. That was a chitlin circuit deal. They didn't even play in white concert halls or anything like that. They were not allowed to play that music. So hip hop is really the rejection of hip hop is really the same mentality
Yes.
that occurred with R&B and with jazz.
Yes.
A lot of jazz
Yes.
musicians had to go
Billie
to
Holiday.
France
Yes.
and to Europe to play because they weren't allowed to play here.
Exactly. Okay.
Wonderful.
So,
Okay, a little bit of time left. And so I wanted to leave off on our last slide for the day of, again, going back to that question, well, why hip-hop? Why hip-hop therapy? And when I asked that, their prayers help me out on this. So one last song. Oh, now I gotta find it.
Fake records. One thing about music, when they hit, you feel no pain. Michael said controls your brain. I know better than that. That's game, and we ready for that. 2 soldiers headed back. Matter of fact, who got it? And where my army at? Rather attack and not react. Back to beats, it don't reflect on how many records get sold on sex, drugs, and rock and roll. Whether your project put on hold in the real world. These just people with ideas. They just like me and you. They cameras disappear again. The real world is bigger than all these fake records. Where Popo got the millions and my woman disrespected. If you check 1, 2, my word of advice to you is just relax. Just do what you got to do. If that don't work, then kick the fact that you a rider, blaming how the crowd excited. Or you wanna just get high and just say it. But then if you a lie, pants on fire, wolf cry, agent with a why, I'm gonna know it when I play it. It's bigger than hip hop. It's bigger than hip hop. Who shot Biggie Smalls? If we don't get them, they gon' get us all. I'm down for running up on them in Nick City Hall. We rock with y'all, all my dogs, stay real. Don't think these record deals gon' feed your season, pay your bills because they not. MCs get a little bit of love and think they hot. Talking about how much money they got. All y'all records sound the same. I'm sick of that fake thug R&B rap scenario all day on the radio. Same scenes in the video, monotonous material. Y'all don't hear me though. These record labels slang I take like dope. You can be next in line and shine and still be writing rhymes and roll. You'd rather have a Lexus or justice, a dream or some substance, a beamer, a necklace or freedom. Sisters like me don't play, hey, I just stay awake. It's real hip hop and it don't stop. So we get the popo off the block. They call it hip hop. It's bigger than hip hop. It's bigger than hip hop.
Someone pause it there. Those are the 2 verses. What did you hear?
The truth.
All right.
The truth. Well, like, what it brings me back to is every time you hear a hip hop song where there's disrespecting a woman, it makes me think, would you say that to your mom? And you know the answer is no. Of course not. Well,
You make
with
it
some of
sometimes.
them.
Yeah.
Well, we can't generalize
Not
it
in my
anyway.
house.
It's not in your house.
No,
Right.
you
Right.
said once.
That's it. That might be the last thing you say.
But that's why I like that part about don't disrespect my woman because,
Mhm.
well, someone's going to get something thrown at them if you do.
Mhm.
You know, it's just not everyone does it, and some of the people who sing about it don't go home and do it.
Mhm.
I think the salient message here is that to appreciate difference.
Yes.
You know, to be able the ability to appreciate difference and things that are foreign to you are not necessarily negative for you.
Mhm.
And that you need to take time to look at the world around you. The world is changing.
Yes.
The United States is changing.
Yes.
We have a different mindset today than it was before, and it's going to continue to change. And it's going to continue to, I think, to grow and develop and morph into many different things. But we have to be aware that as therapists and as psychologists, I think that we have to be open and understand that we have to appreciate difference and not shy away from difference. And I think that that's the central message in hip hop or anything that is new are different.
Yes.
From people who you're not aware of, people you're not familiar with, to people who have different culture, different understandings, different mores than you have. You need to understand that, maybe take a step back and look before you judge.
That was beautifully said. And just the hook of this, I'll get back to you. The hook of that song is bigger than hip hop.
Yeah.
And that's what I believe Dr. Bayless just put very articulately. This is bigger than hip hop.
And also, when you take a look at the business standpoint, I think a lot of times individuals are selling their selves short just to get a record deal. They get into this mindset or this model that truly isn't who they are, but they're trying to fit this mold so that they can make money. And the record companies have put individuals in a situation where they're feeding the masses this information or this negativity, and individuals are buying it. And so whoever who is willing to fit into this mold that I'm selling to you, this is who we will put out and this is who we will back. And so a lot of times you're hearing the negative side of hip hop, the negativity, the disrespect of women and things of that nature. Why? Because people are selling it. People are buying it. If it wasn't selling, they wouldn't be promoting it. But it's selling. So therefore, that's what we see as mainstream hip hop. And what these individuals are saying is that I'm not willing to do that. See, hip hop started out, it wasn't about the money. It was just about the culture. It was about, this is our life, this is my voice. It wasn't about how much money I could make. But once it got into that situation, it became a business. Obviously, people want to get out of their current situation, so sometimes they're willing to sell their soul or sell their beliefs and their values just to make this image so that we can make money. And so these individuals are saying that from the essence of hip hop, it was never about that. It was about the art. It was about the culture. It was about the the community, that sort of thing. And so that's what I got out of that.
Well, and it's also about it, and even like I love the bigger hip hop thing because it's really about authenticity. It's about you can be who other people want you to be, and squeeze yourself into that box, and feel comfortable in the box with other people, and completely out of shape with who you are. Or you can risk being who you are, and what comes with that, but at least it's who you are. And you can have people accept the fake you, okay, or you can be the real you. And probably the majority of people that are in therapeutic services are struggling with exactly that dilemma. Who am I going to be? The person I think I should be, or the person I think I am? And so I love that. Bigger than hip hop, it's about authenticity. Who are you? And do you have the courage to be that?
There's something that I was thinking when I was listening to this song, not at all about the content of what was being said, but the rhythm in hip hop music is so different than in other kind of music. And for me, it makes it just easier because you're engaging with the rhythm, and it's easier just to receive the message because of the rhythm, I think. So it's I think that is what makes hip hop, unique and different than a lot of other types of music. So
I like the no bullshit of it. I do. I'm a no bullshit person, and I mean, whatever everybody else said, but
the rhythm in hip hop is typically 4/4. And what people, if you listen to, and I'm sure some of you here have listened to it, I don't often, but if you listen to hard rock, okay, and if you ever notice hard rock does not have a downbeat, okay, if you listen to hip hop or you listen to R&B music, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, and beats all the music, boom, 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 boom. And if you listen to hard rock, it's boom, 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 and it's a different kind of it's a 2/2 upbeat rather than a 4/4 downbeat, and that's why if you're into listening to R&B music or hip hop music and you hear hard rock, it's like, shit, what the hell is that? And I'm sure the kids who listen to hard rock listen to R&B and they go, shit, what the hell? You know, because they can't
clap to it.
No, you can't clap to hard.
Yeah. It's not the rhythm that you're used
and
to.
you see guys in the, you know, of course I think they're all schizophrenic, but but you know, that's my thought process. Because when I look at the concert, people are jumping around, throwing each other around, and doing got their heads moving. I'm thinking, you know, give me some of those drugs. Shit. But you know, that's my.
There you go. I got him gone.
And it's interesting. And the interesting part of it is that I had to step back
Have y'all
from
seen
it.
this from him? Okay.
I had to step back from it and listen to what was being said, not only one, but two, listen to and observe it and recognize that it's just a different form of music.
Yes.
And my initial response to hard rock was, yuck, what the hell is that, you know? And it sounds like people screaming and hollering, and, you know, I could, and I guarantee you that most people who first hear hip hop go, what the hell is that?
Yeah.
It sounds like bad lyrics to put to old songs, you know?
Yeah.
And, no, I'm serious. And so, it goes back to appreciating difference.
Yes.
And understanding the culture of what's going on there. And because we're all into, from a African American standpoint, rhythm is so important.
Yes.
Because that goes back to African roots.
Yes. Yes.
Okay, and with the downbeat you're hearing is African downbeat.
Yes.
And all black music, religion. You go to a Baptist church,
Yes.
you hear the downbeat.
Yes.
Most R&B famous musicians came out of church.
Yeah.
Marvin
Yes.
Gaye,
Yes.
Houston, you name them. All of them came out of church. Okay, and that's what you hear when you go to a black church. By the way, it's kind of cool. But when you look at in that whole African root process,
Yes.
because that's what the whole drum beat's all about.
Yes.
But you go backwards, and now you have a different genre with hard rock. It's kind of hard to, and it took me a long time to hear it, because it sounded like noise.
Yeah.
Okay, and if you ever listen to what we used to call progressive jazz, you ever listen to Miles Davis, Sketches in Spain.
Yeah.
Okay, and if you're not into jazz and
Right.
don't know what you're listening to, it sounds like noise.
Right. Yes.
So that's the difference.
Well, I wonder if you bring up a really interesting point, like as far as even different communication styles. I mean, what people tend to hear: auditory, visual, kinesthetic,
Exactly.
the 5 love languages. I mean, even communication can be through what you hear in the music, which beat you hear. It's really interesting.
Exactly. Yeah.
And
And the soothing part in terms of what happens to you internally. When you listen to music that you relate to, it allows you to get a good feeling within yourself. And when you listen to music that you're not familiar with, it's kind of like it's like a rejection. It's almost like a stench, you know. And it's really weird.
Right. And to wrap things up, I know we can spend a lot more time just talking and processing, but we do have to wrap things up here. But just to end on that point in terms of communication and tying hip hop beyond the music to the therapy in terms of meeting the needs of communities and allowing it to be accessible, culturally relevant modality of working, in that the communication, the rhythm, the cadence, the lyrics, all of that is a point of entry into understanding someone's world context, their values and their views, and then allows them, with you having that understanding, allows them to engage in therapy that has been developed outside of that community. You allow them that entry point in a relationship that they can explore and have a safe, holding environment to experience pain, to talk about their pain, and be able to rebuild and reshape and strengthen their identity and who they are. So with that, I thank you very much for participating. Appreciate having a community this year, and hopefully I'll be able to come back again.
Well, we already have that plan, right?
We do.
You already on the schedule for a comeback. We'll talk.
Yeah, let's talk. Let's talk.
John will rope you